Hey, Science Peeps, it's Miss CG. Today we are going to talk about Chapter 3, Lesson 2, Punnett Squares. And I think Punnett Squares are really fun. Very important for you to pay close attention to this lesson because it's going to tie into our end of the unit projects, which is going to be your final test grade for the marking period. Okay, so let's go into this week, March 13th through 21st. All right, we're going to go, if you take a look here, for Friday, May 15th, periods 2, 3, okay, and 5, 6. So, chapter 3, lesson 2, right here. All right. So now, what we have, again, pay close attention to these, to my dates up here. So for Friday, May 15th, this activity is for periods 2, 3, and 5, 6 only. For my period 8, 9, you will be doing this on Monday, May 18th. Okay. So let's go to our activities first. It says complete with me the following workbook activities, pages 80 to 85, and find the Google Doc. And we're doing figure 1, 2, apply it, and assess your understanding 2A and 2B. All right, so let's go over to the student view. Okay, so let's go over to the student view, like I said. And you're going to be looking for the chapter 3, lesson 2, workbook activities. So just hover your mouse over that says chapter 3, lesson 1. Here we go. Chapter 3, lesson 2, workbook activities. And there's going to be an activity on probability and heredity today. So click on that document. And here we are. Okay. So just if you peruse this real quick, here are our activities. Okay. And then you're going to have this activity to do at the end. All right. So let's start with figure 1, and I'm going to go to the workbook. All right. So I want to first start with talking about probability. So each time you toss a coin, there are 2 possible ways that it can land: heads up or heads tails, or tails up, excuse me. Probability is a number that describes how likely it is that an event will occur. So there's 2 different possibilities. So that means out of 2, and percent is always out of 100. So if it's 2 different possibilities, that means there's a 50% chance it'll be heads and a 50% chance it'll be tails, because 50 plus 50 equals 100. So whenever we're talking about percentages, the numbers have to equal up to 100. Okay. So that's really what I want to talk about for probability. And this ties into Punnett squares, because we're going to be doing probability out of 4. Okay. So remember, think of 4 quarters. 4 quarters equal $1. So 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25 equals 100. Okay, so keep that number in mind. And let's talk about now probability and genetics. How is probability related to genetics? So let's think back to Mendel's experiments. He carefully counted the offspring from every cross. And when he crossed 2 plants that were a hybrid for stem height, for a tall stem, so capital T, lowercase t, 3/4 of the children, okay, had tall stems. This would be the grandchildren, and about a fourth had short stems. Okay, right. So when we had first we had the parents, and then if you remember from last walkthrough, the one parent was tall, capital T, so it was completely tall. The other parent was short. Every one of their offspring in the F1 were all tall, but they were carriers for, that's where this lowercase t comes in, carriers for the short gene, for the short stem. In the grandchildren generation, the F2, 3/4 of the offspring were tall and 1/4 were short. So we're going to look at how that happens, how traits skip generations. Okay. So every time Mendel repeated the cross, he observed similar results. So this is mathematical. It was proven that this number of, if the one parent was totally a purebred for one trait and the other parent was a total purebred for a different trait, every one of their offspring were 100% purebred for the dominant trait. And then in the next generation, 75% of the offspring showed the dominant trait and 25% showed the recessive trait. It went mathematically like that every single time. So there's a tool that's actually going to show us how and why this works, and it's called a Punnett square. So a tool can help you grasp how the laws of probability apply to genetics, and that tool is the Punnett square. It's a chart, and it shows you all the possible alleles that can be combined for a certain trait. So these Punnett squares that we're using are simple Punnett squares. Yeah, there could be more complicated Punnett squares, but let's learn the simple version first. You learn the more complicated ones later. Not with me, but later in high school. Okay, so geneticists use Punnett squares to see these combinations, these probability, these outcomes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to draw a Punnett square, and then we're going to answer our figure 1 questions on our worksheet. So it says, start by drawing a box. So box, square, okay, and dividing it into 4s. Now I have this handy tool here where I can draw. Okay, pen. And let's use this color. So we're going to divide this box into 4s. Oh, I can't draw a straight line. You'll forgive me. Okay, so now that's the first step. So now step 2, it says the male parent's alleles are written along the top. So the father, the male, if it's a plant, if it's an animal, father's alleles are written along the top. The female, the mother's alleles are written along the side. So in this example here, okay, it says, in this case, the cross is between 2 hybrid pea plants. So they're both, the mother, the male and the female are capital R, lowercase r. So they're both are going to have round seeds. That's the dominant trait, but they are carriers for the wrinkled trait. Okay. So, and let's see here. So we're going to find out what the probability is that they will have an offspring that is round, that's the dominant, or wrinkled. So let me annotate here again. So mom is capital R and lowercase r. So you don't have to write this yet in your on your worksheet, on your Google Doc. Okay, this is just, I'm showing you first. So now I'm going to teach you how to do the cross. So just like, see how this capital R is above these 2 boxes here? That means you write this R in these 2 boxes. Now, by the way, the capital letter always goes first. So that capital R is above this box. So you write that right here. Okay, here's a lowercase r. Now we know that lowercase r's come second, so I'm going to write it over to the side so that this little r is over these 2 boxes. So we're going to write the lowercase r here and a lowercase r there. Okay, so now let's go over to the mom's traits. So here, her r is next to these 2 boxes. So we're going to put her capital R here and her capital R here. Now her other trait, okay, her recessive, even though she's round, she's a carrier for the wrinkle, just like the father. That lowercase r is next to these 2 boxes. So we're going to put a lowercase r here and a lowercase r here. Okay, so now remember, we talked about probability, and think about quarters. All right, if you have 1 quarter, that's 25 cents. So just think about it as 25%. If you have 2 quarters, that's 50%. 3 quarters, 1, 2, 3 boxes would be 75%. 4 quarters would be 100%. So whenever we do probability, the numbers have to always equal up to 100. Okay. So now here's where we're going to start writing in our Google Doc. It says, what is the probability that an offspring will have a wrinkled seed? So now the wrinkled seed is if it's lowercase r. So here we have an offspring. So this is, each box represents the probability that any individual offspring will show this trait. So, I mean, they could have like 30 offspring, and all 30 could be this. That's, the probability is low, but they could all be that. So when you look at this box, it's the probability for every individual. Okay, so it's not like if they have 4 offspring, you're going to have one of each. This is a probability for every individual, this percent chance. Okay, so now the probability that these parents will have a purebred, okay, capital R, capital R. How many boxes has a capital R, capital R? 1. So that's 25%. The probability that these two plants will have an offspring that is a hybrid, still round, but is a hybrid. Here's one box as capital R, lowercase r. Here's one box as capital R, lowercase r. So that's 2 boxes. So 25 plus 25, that's 50%. Now, the probability that they'll have an offspring that is wrinkled, that is totally recessive, so it's a purebred, but for the wrinkle trait, 25% because it's only in one box. So, what is the probability that an offspring will have the wrinkled seed? Right here, only one box is lowercase r, lowercase r. So that would be 25%. So let's go to our figure 1, and we're going to write 25%. Okay. Now, these two are carriers still, so they can still pass it on, okay, but only one. There's only a 25% chance that an individual pea plant of these two parents will have wrinkled seeds. All right, so number 2, what is the probability that an offspring will have round seeds? Explain your answer. So this is a purebred, these are hybrids, but remember the dominant trait is always what you see. Okay, so we could all have tons of recessive traits in our genetics, but only the dominant one is what you see. So we don't really know if we're carriers of the recessive trait unless we have offspring and you see a recessive trait in them. Okay, so anyway, what is the probability that they'll have a round seed? Well, there's 1, 2, 3 boxes that are going to that show that the offspring will have round seeds. So that's 75%. And it says, explain your answer. So 75%. Now look at this. 25 plus 75 equals 100, right? Okay, so always equals 100%. Okay, so how do you know? The Punnett square here shows a 25% chance for RR and a 50% chance for R, capital R, lowercase r. Okay, so all of those will be round seeds. All right, so let's move on to the next activity here. That was actually, oops, my bad. That was actually figure 1. Yes, that was all figure 1. Okay, let me erase this. And we're going to move on to, oops, I have to get my mouse. The next question. Okay, so this box, this is just showing you what I just showed you in the box that I just did on the other page. Okay, so let's see here, figure 2. Okay, so we're on page 84 now in our workbook. Let's talk about these two terms, phenotype and genotype. So there are 2 terms that geneticists use. They are phenotype and genotype. An organism's phenotype, it's its physical appearance or what you see. So when you look at someone, you're seeing their phenotype. And an organism's genotype is its genetic makeup or the alleles. So an easy way to remember this is P for physical. P is what the physical traits of an organism is, okay? What you're seeing. You can't see someone's genotype, okay? The genotype, G for genes. So that's what the genes look like. So you would have to do a blood test to find out their genotype. But P for physical, the physical appearance of the organism. So to compare phenotype and genotype, we're going to look at figure 2, which is next. The allele for a smooth pea pod is capital S. So remember, whenever it's a capital letter, that means that's the dominant trait over a pinched C pod, a lowercase s. So dominant is a smooth pod, and a lowercase s, that's the recessive, that's the pinched pea pod. Okay, that is, they all produce smooth pod. However, these plants can have 2 different genotypes, capital S, or capital S, lowercase s. So that's for the smooth. Remember, dominant is what you always see. So even though there's that recessive trait, it's masked, it's hidden by the dominant capital S trait allele. So if you were to look at a plant with a smooth pod, you wouldn't know. You couldn't tell if it was a purebred or a hybrid. Okay. All you see is the dominant trait. Okay. Now, let's talk about another two words, homozygous and heterozygous. So we've been saying purebred and hybrid. So more scientific terms would be homozygous and heterozygous. So an organism that has two identical alleles for a trait, that's this, capital, capital, or lowercase, lowercase. Okay, so two of the same letter, they're called homozygous. So that prefix homo means same. Now, an organism that has two different alleles is called heterozygous. So capital S, lowercase s. See how they're two different letters? That would be heterozygous. Hetero means different, that prefix, that's what it means. Okay, so now let's take a look at figure 2. An organism's phenotype is its physical appearance. Its genetic makeup is its genotype. So based on what you have read, let's answer these two questions. Number 1, fill in the missing information on this table. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to fill in the genotype first. So we know that a smooth pod is dominant. So what is one possibility that genetic, what is one genotype that this smooth pod could be? So the first one, it could be the homozygous and two dominant. So it's two capital S's. Okay, so let's go to here. So the first one is capital S, capital S. And then the question says, is that homozygous or heterozygous? Well, these two letters are the same. So that would be, remember, the prefix homo means same. So homo, Z-Y-G-O-U-S. Okay. So now what's another possibility? The smooth pod. And remember, dominant is always appears over the recessive. So this could be a capital S, lowercase s. Now, what is that? Are those two the same letters or different? They're different letters. So that would be heterozygous. And then the final combination, I don't have to flip back. We can have two lowercase s's. So that would be the pinched pea pod. Now, those two letters are the same or different. They're the same. So again, that would be homozygous. Okay. These fancy words for just meaning the same or different. Okay. So it says how many genotypes are there for the smooth pod phenotype? Okay. Wow, a lot of new terminology. So how many different kinds of genes, combinations of genes do we have when you have a smooth pod? So you can have a capital S for a smooth pod. You can have a capital S lowercase s for the smooth pod. Okay, so how many different combinations are there for the smooth pod? There are 2. Okay. All right, so let's move on to our next activity, which I believe is, let's see here, it's the apply it. Okay, so look at these guinea pigs, they're so cute, and your second activity is going to be, your second activity today, if you scroll down here, is going to be very similar to what we're about to do. Okay, so we're on apply it. All right, so let's see here. Mendel's principles of heredity apply to many other organisms. Guinea pigs, for example. So in guinea pigs, black fur color, capital B, is dominant over white fur color, lowercase b. So suppose a pair of black guinea pigs produces several litters of pups during their lifetime. So you have mom and a dad guinea pig, and they have lots and lots of babies throughout their entire life, okay? And we're going to look at the combination of the color fur that the babies all have. So the graph shows the phenotypes. Remember, pheno, P for physical, what they physically look like. The graph shows the phenotypes of the pups right a title for the graph. So we always have to have a title for the graph. So we can call this, let's see here. On this line, we have number of pups. And then down here, we have phenotype of offspring. So we could call this, I don't know, offspring of 2 guinea pigs, combination of offspring that 2 guinea pigs have. You can make up as long as it's something like that. So we're going to call this this type offspring of 2 pigs. Okay. Always have to have a title for your data table or chart. Now, it says number 1, how many black pups were produced and how many white pups were produced? So let's take a look at our bar graph. So it looks like this first one for the black pups is right between the 60 and the 70. So we'll say there's 75 black pups and 65 black pups. And let's take a look at that. That looks like that's pretty much in the center. So we'll say 15 white pups. So for this first one, it would be 65 black pups and 15 white pups. So now we're going to go to apply it to. What are the possible genotypes of the offspring? Okay, so the possible genotypes of the offspring. So if it's a black pup, and we're going to go over here, okay? So the pups could be black, but could be carriers for the white trait, okay? Or they could be totally homozygous for black. So remember, capital B was for black, lowercase b was for white. So they could be capital B for the black pups. They could be capital B, lowercase b for black pups. And then if you were a white pup, only be that, lowercase b, lowercase b. Okay, so we don't have to do number 3, but let's take a look at it. It says, what can you conclude about the genotypes of the parent guinea pigs? Explain your answer. So what we can conclude, so remember, what we'd have to conclude is that, and again, if you think back to this whole story of Mendel and those pea plants, what did you notice in the generation of, so you had the parent generation, now the F1 generation, every single plant was tall, but in the next generation, 75% of the plants were tall, dominant, and 25% were short. So look at that, those numbers look right about what they are here. About 75% of the pups that these 2 guinea pigs had, not necessarily these 2, but the 2 guinea pigs had, the 2 parents were black, and about 25% were white. So what that's telling us is that the parents were probably this, capital B, lowercase b. Okay, so most of their pups were black, so they had that capital B, capital B, capital B, lowercase b that they passed along, and then 25% of the pups were that capital lowercase b. So mom and dad were both black, but they had 25% of their babies were white because they were carriers for the white trait. All right, but it's okay. We didn't have to answer. Oh, actually, I did have us answer that. So good thing we went over that. So they both were going to be capital B, capital B. Okay. Actually, what I'm going to do is, since I have this handy tool that I was just shown, I'm going to draw that Punnett square. You do not have to do this. Again, don't mind my lines. And I'm going to prove this to you. Capital B, lowercase b. Remember, dad's traits go up there. I cannot draw at all with my mouse, so don't laugh at me. Okay, so remember, the capital B comes straight down because it's over these 2. Okay, and then the lowercase b, lowercase always goes last. Okay, now the capital B comes across, so 1 goes over here. B, B. That's a B, not a D. You know that is. And then a lowercase b. So we can see here, What is the percent chance that a pup is going to be born with black fur? Well, 1, 2, 3, 75% chance. Now, these two pups, so 50% of the pups are going to be carriers for the white, but 75% of the pups that are born from these two parents who are both black, but they're carriers for the white, are going to be black pups, and only 25% of the pups are going to be white. So that proves what we were saying. All right, so let's go to assess your understanding 2A and 2B. I'm probably over explaining this, and I apologize. I just want to make sure you understand the concept because it's just really important to get. Okay, so yell at me later when you see me next year. All right, so let's go to, oops, my bad. It's probably on the bottom. Sorry about that. Assess your understanding 2A and 2B. Okay. Explain how two organisms can have the same phenotype but different genotype. So this is all going back to our Punnett square that we just did right over here. Okay, so because you can have a combination of capital B, and capital B, lowercase b. Okay, so how can they have the same phenotype, the same physical appearance, but a different genotype? So what we're going to say is that one organism is homozygous, or we're going to use the guinea pigs as this example, black fur, and the other organism is heterozygous, also for black fur. Okay, because remember the dominant trait masks the recessive trait. You're going to be saying that in your sleep. All right. And then the next question says, in their lifetime, 2 guinea pigs produce 40 black pups and 40 white pups. On a separate piece of paper, make a Punnett square and find the likely genotypes of these parents. So what it's saying is that 50% of their pups were white and 50% of their pups were black. So we have to do a couple different combinations. So I'm going to do this here with you. We're going to draw some Punnett squares with my awful drawing skills here. So here's my box. Let's start out with, now we already did the one with both parents being heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b. And we saw that they had 75% black pups, 25% white. So we're not going to try that one. So we got to get 50-50. So what if, let's see here. Why don't we make dad homozygous for black? And what if mom was heterozygous for black? What would happen there? Let's see. So we bring down dad's trait, capital B, bring that down, capital B, bring mom's over, lowercase b, bring down dad's, capital B, bring over mom's, capital B, bring down dad's, capital B, bring over mom's, lowercase b. So now we're looking for 50% of the offspring to be black and 50% for them to be white. Is that going to work out? No. 100% of the pups are going to be black. Okay, we're going to have 50% of the pups be carriers for the white trait. Okay, so you'll see how a trait could skip generation here. Well, both parents was probably somewhere in the moms. She had a parent who could have been white or a carrier too, but there's no way that they can have any white pups at all. So let's erase that. Let's do another Punnett square. What if, let's try dad being white and mom being black, but a carrier for white. So we'll bring the capital B over and bring dad's lowercase b over. We'll bring mom's capital B over because capital always goes first. We'll bring dad's lowercase b. Now, we'll bring dad's lowercase b down and mom's lowercase b. She's a carrier. We'll bring dad's lowercase b over and mom's lowercase b. Now take a look at that. So we see two boxes with capital B, lowercase b. So these offspring, 50% chance they'll be black, but heterozygous, okay, because they're different letters. But look at this, 50% chance that they'll be white, okay? So one parent had to be a white guinea pig and one parent had to be a carrier for the white trait, okay? So that's how that works. So let's see here. Let's go back because now I forget what the question said. All right, make a Punnett square and find the likely genotypes of these parents. So there we go. And that's all you have to do. You have to do trial and error when you do this, okay? So we're going to have a capital B, lowercase b, and a lowercase b. That's the only combination that'll work for that. All right. So when you go and do this activity later on, you're filling in the Punnett square. Remember, double click. You can just click in here and all you have to do is like write your letters, okay? Click over here, okay? Write your letters, so on and so forth. So I want you to do your Punnett squares. So this is just regular Punnett square. This one is you have to like reverse engineer the Punnett square. You have to see like, you know, what could this possibility be? What could that possibility be over there? Okay. In this box, you do have to do the drawing. So I tried my best, but you have to like just draw in. Oh, just erase that box. So if you draw in there like that, okay. But so double click on that box. I believe that's the only box you have to double click on to do that. Okay. And then you answer your questions about probability for the guinea pigs. Okie dokie. Let's go back to our list. There is something else we're going to do together because I want to, again, make sure you understand Punnett squares. So together we're going to do this activity, okay? It's an interactivity on Punnett squares. Okay, so we're going to pretend there was a book called Flatland. It's a really good book. It's about shapes, and these shapes live in a two-dimensional land. So they have length and width, but no height. And they're trying to, it's like a classic science fiction book. And it's like math and science put together, but they're trying to determine, they're trying to understand a world in a three-dimensional universe, but that we live in, and that they just can't. And what the author does is it tries to help us understand, well, what if there's fourth dimensional beings? We can't comprehend that because we only live in a three-dimensional world. Okay, so anyway, this is kind of, they take it from this. So while visiting Flatland, from above, you notice some of the inhabitants have evolved very colorful insides. From above, I feel like I'm reading you a story. From above, you observe towns of red and blue circles, and after a while, get some good ideas about how the genes responsible for their color passes along. Offspring from red parents are always red, unless they are one or more blues in their family. Based on this, you conclude that their color is dependent on a single gene with two alleles in this population, the red alleles being dominant, the blue alleles being recessive. So red is dominant, so that red would be for capital R, and blue would be the lowercase r. Okay, so you can see here, mom, Mary, she's two lowercase r, she's blue. Okay, so let's take a look. So Bob, who is heterozygous, right, two different letters for the color red, and Mary, who is homozygous, because these two letters are the same, for blue, would like to know the probability of them having red or blue children. Okay, so again, I'm going to do this with you. You can go back and do it on your own if you want. So now, Bob. So dad is capital R, lowercase r, and mom is lowercase r, lowercase r. So let's do our Punnett square. So remember that r comes down and this r goes over. So we have capital R, lowercase r for that box. This r comes down, that r goes over. So two lowercase r's. Okay, this r goes down, this r goes over. So we have capital, lowercase. Remember, capital always goes first. And then that R goes down, that R goes over. So 2 lowercase. So let's take a look. What's the probability that they will have a red offspring? 50%, because 2 boxes, right? And then what's the probability that they'll have blue offspring? 50%. All right. So now let's do the challenge. We're not going to answer all these questions. I don't like some of these questions. So we're going to skip that one. Okay. Even though I got it right. Okay. Anyway, what is the probability of John and Mary? John, I think they miswrote that name because it shouldn't be Bob. Okay. Anyway, what is the probability of Bob and Mary having either a red or a blue offspring? Okay. So we just determined that. So they're going to have 50% red and 50% blue. So 50-50. Let's see. Are we right? Bing. Yes, we are. Okay. Punnett swear doesn't lie. All right. I don't like this question with this percentage. You don't have to know that. All right. Look, now I wrote Bob. If Bob and Mary were to have 2 blue offspring, would it be possible for their third offspring to be blue as well? Why or why not? So remember, in a Punnett square, this doesn't mean that if you have 4 offspring, one's going to be this, and one's going to be that, and one's going to be that, and one's going to be that. That's not what a Punnett square means. It means that for every individual offspring you have, this is the chance that it would have this genotype. Okay? So you could have 100 kids and they all could be this. That it's a 1 in, well, actually it's a 50-50 chance here, okay? But that's what that means. It's for every individual offspring. So could they have, if they had 2 blue offspring, could they have a third blue offspring? So let's see. Well, we know the answer is not, let's see here. Yes, the probability of offspring being blue or red is applied to each offspring, not the total number of offspring. That's what it would be. Bing. Okay. So now the next question, if Bob's genotype was capital R, so he's homozygous for the dominant trait instead of capital R, lowercase r, would it still be possible for Bob and Mary to reproduce a blue offspring? So let's find out. So Bob is going to be capital R. Okay. So I'm going to take out, whoopsies, some R's. Because remember, they still get this lowercase r from mom. And now we're going to bring down 2 capital R's. Bing. Ding. All right. So now it says, is it still possible for them to have a blue offspring? Capital R, lowercase r. And that answer is false. They cannot have a blue offspring. There's no way. All the offspring are going to be, so this is going back to the Mendel question, okay? All their offspring are going to be carriers for blue, but 100% of their offspring, no matter how many offspring they have, they can have a gazillion offspring, they're all going to be red, but carriers for blue. Okay, so now next. Now, suppose you knew Bob's color, his phenotype, what he looked like, but not his genotype. What color offspring would Bob and Mary need to have in order for you to determine Bob's genotype? Okay, so now he would have to be, the only way that you can tell what Bob's genotype is, because take a look. If he is, we know he's red. So that's red and that's red, right? Capital R, lowercase r, and capital R, capital R. Now, if he was capital R, all of their offspring are red, okay? So we're just going to assume that he's red. But if Bob, okay, had that capital R, lowercase r, he has that recessive trait, okay? So the only way that we're going to know that Bob is a carrier for the blue is if he is this genotype, okay? And he has to have, there's a 50% chance he'll have a blue offspring, okay? We already know mom's blue, But if all the offspring are red, okay, it's possible. They could have a gazillion offspring and they can always have, it's a 50-50 chance, but they can all be this. So you'll never know unless you do a genetic test. But if these two parents had offspring that were blue, we'll know then that Bob was the carrier. That's the only way that that blue trait will ever show up. Okay, we'll discuss that next. Okay, last question. Is it possible for two blue circles to have a children with the red circles? Let me reset this. Yes, I want to reset. Okay, so we're going to make Bob blue. And that means that Bob is lowercase r, and Mary. We already know she's blue. So the question says, is it possible for them to have a red offspring, a capital R offspring? So I probably don't even have to do this, and you know the answer already. This is what the Punnett square would look like. I feel like I should play music while I do this. Okay, so now every offspring, because they're both recessive, they both are capital R, they're both homozygous recessive, right? All lowercase r's. Is there any way that they're going to have a capital R in their? Yeah, it's not. There's not possible at all. Every single offspring, no matter how many they have, a gazillion, they will all be blue. Okay, so that ends that part of the lesson. So what I want you to do is watch that video, and then this is so fun. It was really fun when we did it in the classroom. You're actually going to make your own monster. Okay. So what you have to do here is you have to hit this, perform the genetic cross. It has really cool sound effects. Okay. And you're actually going to select the phenotype based on the genotype. Okay. So capital E, lowercase e. So here, capital E means that's a dominant. The dominant trait is to have one eye, and the recessive trait for this little creature here, big creature, I don't know, I can't tell, is two eyes. So what's capital E, lowercase e? I mean, it's so that has to be one eye. So you would do that, capital E, lowercase e, because the dominant trait is always seen over the recessive. Now we have lowercase. So that's two eyes. Now you're going to check your work. And it says, yay, we're right. So now you get to choose what trait you want, because it's a 50-50 chance for this beast to have one eye or two eyes. Okay, so then you would pick an eye. Okay, and now move over to ears, do your cross. I'm not going to do all of them. I want you guys to have fun with this. Okay, it does the cross for you. And then you have to make sure you take a look. Capital R means elephant ears. Lowercase r means mouse ears. So put this into the correct box. And then, excuse me. And then if there's a chance that it could have different traits, you get to pick. Okay. And you get to create whatever your monster looks like. So have fun. You go to nose, mouth, fur, and feet. Have fun with your creature. If you want to post a picture of your creature on Google Classroom, go for it. What you could do is use the snipping tool. That's what I do. I go to snipping tool. I select that. I'll hit new. And then you get to go and drag. And there's your picture. And then you can save this. You can hit File, save as to your hard drive. And then you can upload that picture to Google Classroom if you wanted to do that. Okay, you don't have to, but if you wanted to show me your creature. Okay, so that's all I have. I talked enough. Oh my God, you're probably so sick of hearing me now. So anyway, that is what you're doing today. Remember, don't turn in until May 20th for this. Remember to do that second activity down here, okay, for probability and heredity. So do your Punnett square, answer your questions. And that's all I have for you today, which is plenty. So everybody have a nice weekend. CG out.